Nowhere to hide, CTV sparks an immigration probe. Ontario's tobacco tax goes from king size to regular. And roughing it at the Olympics.
The CTV News. Substituting for Lloyd Robertson, here is Keith Morrison.
Good evening. He was defense minister and a key player in the Somali government of Siad Barre, one of the most brutal regimes in history. Today, Hussein Sheikh Abdirahman lives in Canada, and officials are scrambling to find out how he got here and why he was let in. As we told you last night in our CTV inquiry, Abdirahman slipped into the country last summer. Immigration officials don't know, and apparently didn't ask, about his past. They're asking now. Here's Holly Doan.
Hussein Sheikh Abdirahman spent half his life in the service of a tyrannical dictatorship. The government of Somali President Siad Barre. Barre's regime was overthrown in 1991, but not before committing a litany of human rights abuses, including the massacre of 400 political dissidents. Abdirahman was Barre's Minister of Justice, Defense, and Attorney General. Despite that, this summer he was given permission to come to Canada.
They only asked me about my profession, and I told them that I was a lawyer working for the Minister of Justice.
Immigration policy says no member of a foreign government responsible for human rights violations is allowed to live in Canada. So how did Abdirahman slip through the cracks?
I don't know.
Prompted by a CTV News report, Immigration Minister Sergio Marchi has ordered an investigation into Abdirahman's case.
This is an individual who conducted his application properly, and whether he showed officials his proper background. And if he didn't, there will be consequences.
Mr. Speaker,
Reform MP Art Hanger says Abdirahman's case is proof the immigration system is out of control, that security checks are not always thorough.
Well, there's an RCMP check and a CSIS check. How did he slip through both of those particular checks? I'd like to know what happened there.
Abdirahman, meantime, says he's anxious to tell his story, to tell immigration officials how he disagreed with the atrocities committed by his own government.
The people were destroyed and the country was destroyed. And I was in agreement with the people.
Because Abdirahman is already here, he'll get a hearing, a chance to defend himself. Immigration Minister Sergio Marchi says unless he can prove he has no links to human rights violations, Abdirahman will be deported. But department officials may find this is not a unique case. Abdirahman says there are several Somalis like him who worked under the Barre regime, now living in Canada. Holly Doan, CTV News, Ottawa.
It's the night before the budget, and economists, experts, and spin doctors are at the ready as Finance Minister Paul Martin gets set for the performance of his career. He has to juggle two of Canada's chronic problems, the deficit and high unemployment. Leslie Jones reports there is no shortage of ideas, but the question is, will they solve the budget crunch?
It's traditional for the finance minister to deliver his budget in a new pair of shoes. But Paul Martin has traded in Bay Street brogues for steel-toed work boots, a present from the Prime Minister.
We have to put Canada back to work, Minister of Finance.
However, Defense Department employees fear Martin will put the boots to them. The biggest spending cuts are expected to hit Canada's military, with billions chopped from the defense budget, thousands of military and civilian jobs lost.
I don't personally believe that by putting people on unemployment, you will wipe out the deficit. I really don't believe that.
Martin has said for every $2 of government spending cuts, he'll raise $1 in taxes by broadening the tax base. Among the measures being considered, scrapping the $100,000 capital gains exemption, tightening tax exemptions for business meals and entertainment, reducing the tax break on pension income, and taxing company dental benefits. If that happens, the Canadian Dental Association predicts everyone would lose. Patients who feel they don't need dental care will cancel their dental plans rather than pay the tax, raising premiums for those left in the plan.
It just doesn't make any sense to lower taxes on something that makes people sick like cigarettes and raise taxes on dental insurance that keeps people healthy.
The cuts and tax hikes are aimed at bringing down the record deficit to about $40 billion. The Reform Party says if Martin doesn't make deep cuts, he will have missed an important opportunity.
If any time in the history of Canada people are prepared to bite the bullet and share and sacrifice the same across the country, it's this year.
Although the markets were experiencing pre-budget jitters, analysts say the market is prepared to accept a deficit hovering around $40 billion. They say what it's really looking for is a much lower number next year.
They'll want to see some progress towards the Liberals' stated deficit reduction target of 3% deficit of GDP.
That means finding an additional $15 billion over the next two budgets. If the Liberal government is to meet that target, it will have to launch a massive attack on the country's social safety net, from unemployment to health care to welfare, making tomorrow's cuts look tame by comparison. Leslie Jones, CTV News, Ottawa.
And as Leslie reported, the budget is expected to take direct aim at the Defense Department. With the end of the Cold War, a tempting place for governments to squeeze. The armed forces have more than 145,000 people on the payroll, 75,000 regular forces, 34,500 civilian employees, 35,000 reservists. Those figures include 2,800 peacekeepers. The cost of operating the armed forces, Navy, Army, and Air Force, $12 billion a year. One small corner of the military complex is more anxious than most about the federal budget, the Royal Roads Military College, a fixture on Vancouver Island since World War II. By this time tomorrow, it could be history. Roger Smith.
Escort to the collar. Present! Arms! Up.
Without even facing a bullet, these cadets could become casualties of war. The war on Canada's deficit. Sources say Royal Roads and its $18 million a year budget are on the list of defense cuts proposed to Cabinet. Cadets and officers have been ordered not to talk, though all the rumors are undermining morale.
It's the unknown, I think, is the worst part. They simply don't know what's going to happen.
On college playing fields, the fear is that the Liberal government won't play fair with the West. Royal Roads is one of 3 military colleges in Canada. The others are in Ontario and Quebec, Liberal strongholds that would be spared.
And I think we can interpret it once again that Central Canada comes first and the West comes second.
Royal Roads has been producing officers since 1940. Supporters say it now pumps about $16 million a year into the local community, and that there'd be little saved because it would cost just as much to educate cadets elsewhere. Though no one wants the deficit battle fought in their own backyard, these former college commandants insist closure simply makes no sense.
Studies have been done, and they've all said the same thing, that it's not going to save any money to close this college.
You will reduce the representation of the Western provinces in the military and in the leadership of the country.
There will be howls of outrage from everyone hit by the budget, especially from towns affected by the closure of any military bases. In all that hue and cry, defenders worry that the fate of one military college may go almost unnoticed. Ron Capern has been firing off letters to Ottawa, but fears no one is listening.
It's a bit of a voice crying in the wilderness, frankly, because the government in Ottawa tends not to care a great deal about what happens out west.
Though Royal Roads has survived past predictions of its demise, it seems the only thing that will save it this time is a last-minute reprieve. Roger Smith, CTV News, Colwood, BC.
And coming up in a minute, Ontario rolls over on cigarette taxes.
It's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong.
An unpopular decision lights up considerable controversy. The province of Ontario has cut cigarette taxes. Tomorrow, the price of a carton of cigarettes will drop from $41 to $23. It's been 2 weeks since Ottawa announced its plan to slash taxes, and Quebec responded with its cuts, and since then, Ontario has been flooded with cheap cigarettes from Quebec. Today, the province gave in to the inevitable. Colin Gray reports.
The Ontario Treasurer looked and sounded like a man who'd been backed into a corner.
It's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. And that's why I'm
they say, very, very uncomfortable making this announcement today.
The announcement that Ontario will cut cigarette taxes by nearly $10 a carton, bringing prices into line with those in Quebec. That will put a stop to the flood of lower-priced cigarettes coming into the province. Good news for retailers near the Quebec border. In the 2 weeks since prices were slashed in Quebec, Jay Latchman nearly lost his business.
I lost about $300 a day in sales. I was pulling money out of my bank, and if I didn't have some reserve cash, I would have been very deep in trouble.
The only people happier than Ontario cigarette sellers are Ontario smokers.
That's great. That's just great.
Great. Won't have illegal cigarettes anymore.
The tax cut is going to cost the province $500 million. The anti-smoking lobby says it's going to cost a lot more because the number of young smokers is going to rise.
We can safely estimate that somewhere between 9,000 to 10,000 young people will start smoking every month as a result of this tax cut.
There are deaths which will flow directly from the addiction of kids today.
Logren's defense, Ottawa and Quebec had left him no choice.
I really do find it difficult without engaging in excessive rhetoric as to how much I hate making this announcement today.
Just as Ontario was forced into this by events in Quebec, the western provinces are now going to face exactly the same pressure. They're pledging a united front against cheap cigarettes from Ontario, but admit they may be difficult to keep out. And if they can't keep them out, it's likely that the tobacco tax dominoes will continue to fall. Colin Gray, CTV News, Toronto.
The special inquiry investigating the blood supply heard testimony today from people infected by HIV. As many as 1,000 were infected through blood products or transfusions before the blood supply was screened for the virus. The story is today angry, troubling, and moving. CTV's medical correspondent Avis Favreau tells them.
Yeah, tomorrow.
For years, Lena Dad tried to keep her son Bobby's HIV infection a secret for fear of attacks and ridicule. But today she overcame that fear to give moving testimony at the Creever inquiry, probing Canada's tainted blood scandal.
I am very angry because somebody has given my son a death sentence that isn't going to be reversed.
Bobby was infected during heart surgery when he was just 3. But it wasn't until 1988 that he was diagnosed with HIV. Today, his mother says that his health is deteriorating rapidly.
I have no good words for the Red Cross, excuse me, none. Why? Because if you go to a store to buy a product, you expect to get a good service, do you not? Well, that's what I expect from my son's blood. He went in the hospital to get well, and here he's going to die.
My hospital contacts me regularly, asking for money for their building fund. They've got my address. Why haven't they contacted me about the possibility that I was transfused?
Lynn Kampf didn't learn she had HIV until 13 years after she was infected during emergency surgery. Her husband Gabriel remains HIV negative, but both wonder why no one warned them that they could be at risk.
We have lived with my life in jeopardy since 85 on, and I'd like to know who made that decision that my life was expendable.
The Red Cross, however, says it did tell transfused patients to get tested, to take precautions, through 2 news releases in 1987.
What we're learning now that perhaps it wasn't sufficient, that people did not identify with those press releases, did not act upon it.
But those infected want more answers. That's the reason for this inquiry and the reason these people want their tragedies made public. Avis Favreau, CTV News, Toronto.
Scientists in the United States announced today they have discovered new value for the anti-AIDS drug called AZT. A new study has shown that HIV-infected pregnant women are much less likely to pass the disease to their children if they take AZT. Without the drug, 25% of infants with HIV mothers were infected. With AZT, just 8%. There's a little girl in Montreal who was born with HIV. Her name is Jessica. She is 2. And some time ago, we told you she was expelled from her daycare center when the owners found out about her condition. There was a protest about that, and a public hearing was told the chance of another child getting HIV from Jessica was 1 in a million. So the daycare asked parents to vote on whether Jessica should be allowed to stay. And today, the answer came back. Most of the parents, a big majority, said if Jessica stays, they'll pull their kids out. Directors of the daycare will make the final decision. The Parti Québécois has won a key by-election, taking what was considered a safe Liberal seat in Gaspé. It was once held by former Quebec Finance Minister Gérard Dillevêque. Tonight, PQ candidate Marcel Landry won easily over Liberal Nicole Appleby-Arbor. Supporters cheered Landry and PQ leader Jacques Parizeau at tonight's victory party.
I can't imagine a message that can be clearer than that. Not only because Mr. Landry has won, but because of the amplitude of the victory.
The defeated Liberal candidate blamed a smear campaign, she said, by the PQ. And a story came in tonight about a 14-month-old toddler who was leaning against a third-story window screen in Halifax, and the window screen broke, and the little girl fell out and fell 10 meters down. A canvas awning from a pizzeria broke her fall. She's bruised, a little shaken, but otherwise fine. Coming up, the safe streets of Sarajevo. Sleds and not snipers rule the sidewalks as the city comes under UN control.